Support for this podcast comes from Frito-Lay and the 2023 Snack Bracket Championship. The Frito-Lay Snack-It Challenge is underway, and fans are voting on their favorite snacks to crown champion. We're talking about prime-time matchups between the best 64 snacks in the land. Will Ruffles Ridges reign supreme? Can Doritos defend their dynasty? Or will Smart Food use their smarts for a surprise upset? Only you can decide. Get in on all the action for a chance to win up to $1,000 or a year's worth of snacks. Let your snacks be heard. Just go to fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com to vote and enter for a chance to win. No purchase necessary. Sweepstakes ends April 3rd, 2023. Void where prohibited. Year's worth of snacks awarded in the form of 52 coupons, each good for one bag of chips. See official rules at fritolaysnacket.sbnation.com.
How's it going, Knight fans? Welcome to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. My name is Jeff Sharon, alongside Eric Lopez, and neither of us went to New York, Eric, and boy, if there was one time when I wish the NIT had a consolation game, it was it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bummed out. Basketball season's over. I'm kind of going through withdrawals.
But this is the latest our basketball season has lasted.
It's true. It's just true. So it's not a bad. I'm not saying, it's not a bad thing. I mean, there's a lot of positives. It's just kind of like, wow, that's what a year.
But we'll talk about that. We'll put a bow on UCF's basketball season. Of course, the Knight's coming up short in the NIT semifinal against TCU. We'll talk about that. We'll talk some softball. We'll talk some baseball. And we've got also some golf news to talk about a little bit here. This will be we'll focus pretty much on wrapping up basketball. I think I want to try and really wrap it up, I guess, in the next couple of weeks here, because we're heading towards the part of the spring where we're running out of things to talk about. But we'll certainly have some more guests on to kind of chat about that going forward as well. Don't forget to go to blackandgoldbanneret.com. For the latest on any of the big things going on with UCF, your independent voice of the UCF fan. Don't forget you can also follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. Follow me at Jeff_Sharon and Eric at Eric Lopez Elo. Look us up on Facebook. Just search blackandgoldbanneret.com. You can also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, where you can leave us a review. Please do. iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, and TuneIn Radio. And, of course, all other affiliates thereof. So let's dive in by talking about the news that was from the NIT. UCF making it to the semifinals, of course, but coming up short against TCU. What a ride it was for this team. They come up short 68-53 in a game that, early on, Eric, it looked really good. At the 5-minute mark of the first half, UCF was up 29-19. And things were looking good. Matt Williams was hitting shots. The inside-outside game was working. And then Jamie Dixon, the head coach of TCU, made some sort of an adjustment after Matt Williams hit a three that put UCF up 10 at that point. And from that point forward, TCU went on a 25-5 run, pushed it out to double digits. Their largest lead was 15, but basically they finished with their largest lead. So, but all of a sudden you look up and UCF led by 2 at the half, but it was tied. UCF got 2 to take the lead, 31-29 at the half. TCU just kept making shots, and all of a sudden it was 45-34. Basically 5 minutes into the to the second half. So, I guess my first question for you is what in the heck happened in that game? Why did this turnaround take place?
I think TCU turned up its intensity and took their game to another level, and I don't think UCF could match it. I thought UCF at times offensively was thrown off the rhythm. TCU's deep ball pressure was very good. And I just think, the Knights just couldn't get into a rhythm there. And I think TCU, give them credit. They're a very good defensive team. Jamie Dixon from Pittsburgh, we know him very well. Mm-hmm. He knows what he's doing. And I thought they turned it up and really got the momentum. And I could tell UCF lost some confidence, I thought, offensively at times. They were not so sure what they were doing. BJ was off his game. So TCU is very good. I mean, TCU is a very good basketball team and tough from the Big 12. And, it was a tough matchup. I was worried about that. Because we've talked about it all year, Jeff. At times UCF offensively has those dry spells where they just kind of go into a bit of a slump. They just can't get in a rhythm. They can't get certain things to go down, and I think that's what happened during that time period. My
thought on it was TCU beat us at our own game all the way around. They out-rebounded us 44-35, and we're one of the top rebounding teams in the country. They out-rebounded us. Matt Williams, the major adjustment I think they made, and it started with this. I mean, there were a number of adjustments that they made, but they started closing out much better on Matt Williams. And when that happened, so he got off to that hot start, and I'm looking at the first half box right here. In the first half, Matt was 5 of 10 for 13 points. In the second half, he was 0 for 7, 0 for 4 from three-point range, and scored a total of 2 points on 2 free throws. So that tells me that they keyed in on Matt Williams. They said, we're going to keep him from shooting from the outside. Tacko Fall got into foul trouble. That was the other thing that happened. And when you do that, you kill off the inside-outside game that we have. Let's see, Tacko in the first half had 2 fouls. He picked up a third foul, I think, early in the second half, and then he had to sit for a while. And that kind of really put a damper on things. He had to sit for, I think, the last few minutes of the first half. Picked up the third foul, had to sit again, and that pretty much did it, because then they keyed in on Matt Williams. He couldn't get open. He could not get open in the second half. And then when that happens, and his shot's not falling, I think this is where a little bit of inexperience that's left with B.J. Taylor kind of creeps in, because if Matt's not making his shot, then B.J. ceases to trust him and says, all right, this isn't working. I'm going to have to do it myself. And in the second half, let's see, that's the first half box. In the second half, B.J. was 3 of 11 from the field for 8 points. And that was that. It just kind of, it wasn't that we ran out of gas or anything. In fact, I think that had we won this game, I think if we played Georgia Tech, I think we would have beaten Georgia Tech. I watched the Georgia Tech game, and I was not impressed with that team. But Jamie Dixon made the right adjustment and called the right number. And it's a credit to him. He knew he was also playing against a team that had a 7-man rotation. And if Matt Williams is not hitting, who else is going to hit from the outside? The answer is nobody, at least right now. Okay, and so you got to give him credit. They won the game. They figured it out. Not everybody can figure all that stuff out, but TCU has the athletes to do it. They're a Big 12 team. They have the athletes to do it, and they were able to unlock the key to beating UCF in this game. What do you think?
No, I think you hit it in the head. I think that's very valid. They beat them in their own game. They were physical, and they took BJ out of the game. You know this. UCF's going to have a hard time winning games if BJ Taylor is not playing well. I mean, that's as simple as that. And Matt Williams wasn't drilling bombs, from 30 feet. So.
But even more so if BJ feels like he has to do it all himself. That I think is the key, because we've seen this before, where he takes it upon himself to actually do this, and you want him to just stop and be like, no, relax for a second. Just trust your guys. It'll work. And now sometimes it works. He takes over a game like he did in the Cincinnati game. He'll take over a game, and the other team can't stop him. But credit to TCU's defense, because they were able to harass him getting down to getting into the lane. He couldn't hit on his pull-up game. And he couldn't, and he was just when he got down low, he was in too much traffic to be able to finish, and he couldn't finish late in the second half.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. So, look, give credit. TCU was a better team, I thought. I mean, I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of. TCU is very good.
Right.
Jamie Dixon knows what he's doing. It's the second time UCF's been eliminated by a Jamie Dixon-led team. I mean,
that's right. Pitt back in 2000, and I remember watching that game. In a game that UCF, I thought, had a chance to win, that first of the 2 straight A-Sun games. when Pitt was in the Big East. Yeah, we lost that game. We actually had a lead in that game in the second half.
Yep, 2004.
Yeah.
So, it's still a great year. Well, it's been a fun ride, and I think UCF built a lot of positives and momentum on and off the court moving forward to the following season.
Mm-hmm. So, as we kind of look back now and figure this out, what is? First of all, it's a shame that it ends like this because, like I said in the opening, back in the day, the NIT, by the way, used to have a consolation game. And I got to figure out when exactly they stopped doing this, but they stopped doing this. I feel like it would, the 1 year that I wish they actually did have a consolation game, of course, this year, because then you would have gotten that second game in Madison Square Garden. And it would have been nice. I mean, it would have been nice to see UCF play one more game. It would have been against Cal State Bakersfield, but as it is, you get just one game, one shot in the Garden. It was Andrew Fegley who posted this question to me. Do you think that UCF? What does UCF really get out of this in terms? Because I know that you're probably not making money making the extra trip and all the even though you're going to a city with a big airport and your travel party's not nearly as big as it is for say football, but do you think that this works for UCF? Was this something that in the long term beneficial for UCF as an athletic program?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, think of the exposure they got on television throughout the week. I think you saw where like Tacko Fall head or something like that was on the NBC Today show, something like that. Did you see that? So
I did. I saw there was a ton of UCF stuff all over the all over television. I mean, all over, in particular over Today show and all that kind of stuff on the day leading up to it. Yeah.
Right. So you had that, and the fans that followed this team all of a sudden, they was watching UCF basketball they hadn't watched in years, and I think there's a lot of positives that I don't think you could put a dollar sign on it. I mean, the 10,000. You and I were there. We talked about it last week, and I think that's a lasting impact on this program. People will be excited about this product going into the season coming up. So, that's to me the big takeaway. I don't think the dollars matter in this situation. I mean. So they made a run. They got some exposure nationally. People are talking about their program nationally. And Joe Lunardi was talking about their, chances for post NCAA next year and stuff like that. It's a lot of significance positives there off the court, even more than on the court. And, I think in retrospect, Jeff, I think it worked out perfectly that they didn't make the NCAA tournament and made the NIT because – if they would have made the NCAA, they would have been a low seed. Yeah. And the fans would have gotten into it, but most of them would have probably watched it from home because it's a quick turnaround. Some would have made the trip, but it's a quick turnaround. And then, let's say they lose in the first round or maybe the second. Oh, that was great. But the fact that you in the NIT got to host two games, especially one with your first sellout, and people got to visually see it in person, and was able to connect with Johnny Dawkins and that speech he gave to the fans and the students in person from the court, with everybody standing around him, 10,000. And that stuff you just can't put a number on that. And I think that's the big impact moving forward for the program.
I do think the exposure on ESPN is obviously tremendous, like you mentioned. Now UCF has to play the expectations game. And I mentioned this, actually, Christian Brewery sort of mentioned this on Twitter, and I kind of piggybacked off of that while we were watching the game. I said, now the expectation game begins because I'll guarantee you that a lot of fans, let's say UCF gets to the NIT again next year. Now, instead of this year, we're like, wow, what a great NIT run, what a magical time. Then all of a sudden, if the same exact thing happens next year, fans are going to be disappointed, which I think is unfortunate because it's still, I know the NIT is the NIT, not invited tournament and all that kind of stuff. But it's hard to play postseason basketball because these teams in the NIT, they're not bad teams, all right? And the other larger point, though, is that UCF being in the American Conference, this is where it almost kind of becomes a disadvantage in a way. Because the American is in this no man's land between the big conferences and the mid-major one-bid leagues. where I personally think UCF is just as good, if not better than some teams that actually made the NCAA tournament as an at-large. But the problem that they run into is the perception of the American as not a very, as basically one step above a one-bid league. I think it's a false perception, but the perception of the American as that kind of handcuffs the teams that come out of it, because the Americans should have more bids out of the into the NCAA based on the quality of the overall quality of the conference, and they don't. And that to me is unfortunate, and it kind of puts UCF into a bind where they could have a really good NCAA worthy, possibly at large worthy season, and get stuck in the NIT because of the general perception of their conference. What do you think about that?
I hope so. I hope the league gets more bids in. You look at the next year. It's going to be interesting with the American Conference. Can they crack the power? Top 5, top 6 in the league, for example.
I think they should, but the question is, does the committee? I don't know if the committee does, and that sucks.
Well, let's look at the leagues they're going up against. The Big 12 is very good. The ACC is very good. Obviously, the Big 10 still very good, even though this year they were down, but they're still very good. You have got the Pac-12 you're dealing with, and the Big East is very good in basketball. So, look, I think with the American Conference, I thought it was a transition year with a lot of new coaches in the league, and it's going to come down to, can Memphis get back to being Memphis under Tubby Smith? Can Connecticut bounce back after a really bad year? That's going to be a couple of the questions. Then you got teams like UCF and Houston. I think they're in a similar boat. Kelvin Sampson's done a nice job there.
Yeah,
and it's about winning marquee games out of conference, helping out your RPI. And I think Coach Dawkins is going to schedule tough. They're going to be at that Orlando tournament next year in Thanksgiving weekend. West Virginia's in that field, so there's a possibility UCF plays West Virginia, for example. There's been speculation about some of the other teams that UCF might be scheduling that is certainly power conferences or the Big East. So, I think that's, you got to win those games, and that's how you get respect. Look, this is a league that's capable. It's gotten 3-4 bids. So it's not like it's not capable of it. It's just, you got to be patient with it. Again, there's a lot of new faces in this league. And, I think for UCF now, this was a positive step, and I think this will help them. Traditionally, teams that make deep runs in the NIT tend to make the tournament the following year, or at least get the benefit of the doubt or get an extra long look. So I think last year was the exception when George Washington won, but or was in the deep run. So it's going to take some time with the league, but it's going to come down. I'm always a believer that every league is only as good as your backbone of your league in certain sports. And let's be honest, I think in the American, when Memphis and UConn are good to go along with the others, that's when I think the league gets an extra spark. And I think UCF will be fine in that regard with Johnny Dawkins. Johnny Dawkins helping will help. And I also think I think next year UCF will be in a lot of television packages much friendlier. In other words, they'll be on ESPN2 games instead of ESPN News all the time.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just let me give you this. This is based on at-large records by conference in the NCAA tournament this year. ACC had 9 bids. Big East had 7. Big 10 had 7. Big 12 6. SEC 5. Pac-12 4. Then you have the A10, Atlantic 10 with 3, the West Coast Conference with 2, and the American with 2. Should the American have had more than just 2 bids in the NCAA? If you just think about these general conferences and the fields that they put in, should the American have had at least as many as the Atlantic 10?
Who are you making an argument for? Are you making an argument for Houston? Who are you making an argument?
Let's make an argument for Houston.
I think the problem that hurt Houston is they got knocked out early in the conference tournament. They lost to Connecticut. So that didn't help their cause. Plus, they have a lot. It's not like, the thing that hurt Houston, if you look at their conference, non-conference, they didn't really beat anybody. In fact, they lost to a bad LSU team. So it goes back to, you got to win some non-conference games.
That's true. That's true. I think my other point was, could you have seen, objectively speaking, St. Mary's was the second team out of the West Coast Conference. Gonzaga, obviously 34-1. Okay, fine. But, yeah, and I'm just kind of spitballing here, but head-to-head, you think UCF would beat, say, St. Mary's?
Who knows? Where's the game played at? I mean, St. Mary's a good team. They won their first-round game so in the NCAA. So they kind of proved they belong. I mean, they have had a long rivalry with Gonzaga. I see your point. Look, I mean, I do think that the committee uses the RPI way too much. I wish there was other formulas they could adapt to and use more. But again, I think the American situation. Look, I mean, you're right. I think the committee has to open their eyes a little bit more. I thought UCF had beaten SMU. Here, I'll side with you on this. Mm-hmm. Had UCF beaten SMU in the semis and gotten to the final, I think they should have gotten consideration for the NCAA tournament.
I think you're right about that. Yeah.
And at least be in the conversation. I'm not saying get in. At least be in the conversation and stuff like that. But again, the league's got to, I think, win some games out of conference. That's where you make your butter. And I think, look, I mean, we say this, look at the Missouri Valley. It used to be the Missouri Valley would get multiple teams into the field. This year, the team that went 17-1 or whatever in the regular season didn't even make the NCAAs, Illinois State.
Yeah, and we beat them up there in Chicago. So
UCF beat them. So I think now you hope that next year with all these coaches in the second year and the experience, you look at next year, obviously, I think UCF and Houston are going to be two teams people are going to be talking about at the top. SMU, obviously, we'll see what they come back. Cincinnati in the mix, obviously. So, I mean, that's four strong teams. And then, who knows what Tubby will do in his second year in Memphis. So I think it'll be a better league. And if you can win some marquee games, again, out of conference, I mean, that's kind of the thing that will be key. And I think Coach Dawkins, if you follow his philosophy, he will schedule tough. And I think that's going to help UCF from an RPI and just from a scheduling standpoint and just kind of knowing how good this team is. And I think it'll in the committee's eye.
Some big questions as UCF, obviously we finished the year 24-12. Amazing. Great. It's a great year. Second winningest year in program history. Here's who we're losing this year. Tank Effiani's gone as a senior. Nick Banyard is gone as a redshirt senior. And then, of course, Matt Williams. It's tough to see those guys go because they did really contribute well. But you got the new guys coming in. You got guys like Terrell Allen. You've got Cesar DeJesus, Deion Griffin, Roca Silvitas. Chance McSpadden will be back. You got a number of guys out there, and obviously I almost left him out. Aubrey Dawkins, who's transferred over from Michigan, Coach Dawkins' son, who's 6'6" swing guy, who everyone is going nuts about how good this guy is. I had guys tell me, you don't see in practice, but sometimes the twos, the guys on the second team beat up on the ones, the guys on the first team. And it shows. And if that's true, then that's good to see. That's fun to see. That means the future is bright. I think my larger question though is, and I would love to put this question to Taylor Young or Mike O'Donnell at some point. Maybe we'll have them on an episode later on. But Tacko Fall, there's already some buzz about him going to the NBA. I know your answer, I think, is probably the same as mine, that you and I both agree that he should not. I'll never begrudge a kid for taking his shot at the NBA because you just don't know the circumstances, right?
Yeah.
All things being equal, I think that Tacko should stay one more season at the very least because he does have some growth to encounter on at least on the offensive side. Do you make anything of the speculation surrounding him taking a shot at the NBA, or do you think it's all a red herring?
That's a good question. I here's the thing, because I cover the NBA obviously on the side. Mm-hmm. I don't think he fits today's NBA game right now. So I really don't understand how declaring early, because he's not a first round pick. Like, not even close. He's not really polished around the rim. He's not really athletic. He's really tall. I think there's room for improvement. I don't see him fitting in a league right now in the NBA where small ball is the it thing right now in the league. So I don't see could he be drafted? Sure, people always take potential, but I don't see him as a first-round pick. I think he's at best a second-round pick. And I think he's better off staying here, getting his education, and improving his game. If he can improve his game like he did from last year to this year and improve from this year to next year, then we might have a conversation. But I just don't – and this is a loaded draft that's coming up, by the way.
Yeah.
So I don't get it. I don't get it at all. I hope he gets good advice. And I think UCF fans know where I'm going with this. As you recall, there was Jacoby Glenn, a couple of defensive player of the year at UCF. Decided to declare early, even though really against the wishes of the coaching staff.
Yeah, George O'Leary was unhappy about that.
No, and it wasn't because, I want my player back. It was just like, you're not
ready.
Not going to. Yeah. And he didn't get drafted. Now, a credit to Jacoby, he has still worked his what off, and he's turned himself to a solid NFL player with the Chicago Bears and the quarterback. But I do worry, and not just, I think in college basketball as a whole, that kids get a lot of bad advice. Yeah, you could be a potential late first, or, there's only 60-some picks. And it would be a mistake I just would be perplexed by it, especially since I get a sense that this kid's pretty smart, pretty bright. So yeah, I don't see it, to be honest with you.
I do think there's a spot for him in the league as a rim protector if he's able to, sort of speed up his game a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, he's not going to be the small ball big guy. He's not going to be anything like, say, an Anthony Davis or any of that. I mean, that's just not in the cards. But he can be a rim protector, I think, certainly off the bench. If you have a team that decides to go anti-small and play big, I think he becomes a project that certain coaches may certainly salivate over.
But is that really worth declaring early?
I don't think it is. But again, I'm not the one who's going to advise him on that decision.
That's my only thing. I hope, and I think I like to think he will. I just hope he gets good advice on that. I do think that the possibility of him. Sorry to interrupt, but I do think that the possibility of him sticking around at UCF is better, considering the fact that he's got an NBA coaching staff around him. Right.
I think that the fact that he's under the tutelage of Johnny Dawkins, Johnny is going to present him with, hey, look, I've been here. I know. I've played in the NBA. I know my NBA. I have my NBA contacts, and here's what they tell me about you. And you should probably stick around here for a little bit longer. I think that is certainly more helpful in general than if he had a coaching staff, say, that had no NBA exposure, no NBA experience, and then he could easily say, well, how do I know that you have you have my best interests in mind?
Yeah, I hope so. We'll see. I would be shocked if he declared. I'll be honest.
I do too. I think it would be I don't want to say a disaster, a tragedy, or any of those kinds of things. I think that's too strong. But it would not be a good day for UCF for Tacko Fall if he left that early, I think. And because like I said, I still think he has a lot more development to do. I think he's come a very long way. He has a long way to go, as do a number of his teammates, B.J. Taylor included. So it'll be. I think that the rotations next year are going to be really interesting to work out, especially with all the new guys coming in. That's going to be very interesting to see, and who hits the weight room this year. Who takes advantage of their opportunity and seizes it. So this will be something that we'll have to follow as the summer and then the fall progresses. We get ready for next year. All right, let's take a quick breather. We come back. We'll talk a little softball. We'll talk a little baseball, and we will take a look at what else is going on around the world of UCF here in just a little bit. Stick around. The Black and Gold Banneret Podcast is back after this.
Hello, Night Nation. I'm Andrew Fegley.
And I'm Trey Strelko. Where are we? This isn't our usual spot.
It looks like we've landed in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Oh, yeah. I've heard of those guys.
You know, Nightline has UCF sports covered.
Week in and week out, we bring you interviews with newsmakers and in-depth analysis of UCF sports.
Subscribe to our weekly podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Be sure to subscribe to Nightline on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and follow us on Twitter at UCF_Nightline.
Trace, can we go back to the 1148 studios now and start working on our next all-new Nightline?
How do we get out of here? Go Knights!
Charge on.
Now back to you guys in the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast.
Welcome back to the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Jeff, Sharon, Eric Lopez with you. We continue this week talking a little softball. And Eric, you and I were just at what was a pretty emotional day for UCF softball as the Knights defeat the UNF Ospreys in a game that was quite tight. Final tally was 2-1. And UCF gets the victory in back of Cassidy Brewer's RBI hit in the sixth. But emotional for a different reason because UCF honored one of their own who's on the UNF coaching staff.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal. Shelby Turnier, his first year an assistant, doing a good job with a pretty improved UNF softball team, and came as her first return trip to campus since her career ended in May in the regionals in Gainesville in 2016, because people forget, once the season ended, Jeff, they went bus back to campus, and then she packed up her stuff and went to Chicago to play for the Bandits in the NPFs and went on to win the NPF championship. So
one hell of a midseason acquisition.
Right, but then she pitched and won the NPF championship for the Bandits, and then coming back from Chicago, she interviews in Jacksonville for an open job at UNF, and she gets the job. So it was a wild year there for her, but so it was great to see her back, and a lot of familiar face, and the UCF decided right now it will kind of celebrate her, and then Allison Kime returning, and Stephanie Best returning, and Natalie Land returning for the greats players in the program, and they have good to get them on and honor them before the game. It was fun. It was very fun and very, very surreal day, to be honest with you. That's why my voice is a little taken up. I'm certainly drained emotionally. I think for a lot of people, UCF got the win. That was the important thing, no question, against a pretty good UNF team. They needed that going into conference, but on the road against ECU coming up. But yeah, it was just it was overwhelming, to be honest with you, Jeff. It was very it was I had to definitely at times hold my emotions a little bit, from as I was doing the event there. So it was cool. It was good. It was good to see everybody back. It was good. It was a unique situation there, to say the least.
I was joking with Shelby, and it was good to see. It was good to see her. Obviously, Allison was out there, and Allison with her 6-week-old son.
Yeah,
there. I was like, "How you doing, Allison?" She's like, "I'm doing all right. I'm hanging in there." Natalie looks, Natalie was there. It was good seeing her for the first time in a while.
And that was the thing.
We've seen Stephanie before. Actually, we caught up with her right before the season started. But and it was good seeing them and Kaylee Novak out there. Her former teammate as well. It's easy for us to forget. It seems like Shelby, was out there for a while ago. Seems like a while ago, but it was just last year. And Shelby is, now in her coaching staff. By the way, I asked Coach Gillespie about that. Because her coaching tree is kind of expanding pretty quickly. I mean, when you spent as long in time in college softball as you have, as Coach has, that's certainly. It's going to reveal itself. But here's what Coach had to say about Shelby being on the other side.
You know, you see Shelby coaching, and, you know, Jeff was with us too, that's coaching for UNF also. We've got a lot of players now that are out there coaching, and we feel as coaches that if we're keeping that excitement in our players that they want to coach and give back, then we're doing our job. So it's always exciting to see them giving back and helping the next generation.
Yeah, so I agree. I think that's kind of like the underrated part of Coach Gillespie's legacy is how many coaches have come out of this. How many people have gone into coaching, that have come out of her program. I mean, even, not just people who coached at UCF, folks like, Stephanie Best had a time at UCF. Hillary Barrow was at UCF for a little while. She had a couple of former coaches, a couple other players, Jen Whitley, but also, players who've gone on to coach in other schools as well. And also former assistant coaches who've gone on to other schools as well. So, Renee's mark is out there, and I think that's that for me is encouraging to see because everyone knows she's been there for a long time, and that's fun to see it. Considering we've seen how this program just started, and there she and now look at who we see all over the place, right?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned, Ruben Felix obviously is at Ole Miss, for example. To your point, Jerice Olson is at North Dakota State, back at her alma mater, coaching there. Shelby's at UNF. Mackenzie Hoon, who's on the team the last 4 years, she's an assistant at D2 at Palm Beach Atlantic. Mm-hmm. Danielle Brewer, who played here from 2012 to 2013, is at Shorter. You have Jessica Yavari, who's a volunteer coach at Stetson. Kaylee Novak's a volunteer at UCF. It could go on and on. Hillary, you mentioned, is at FIU, closer to home with family down there at FIU, doing a good job there. So, yeah, it goes on and on. Lindsay Enders, who you covered, is now starting up a program up in Virginia at Stratford, like a small school there.
Right.
So she's a head coach now over there, building a program from scratch. So it just tells you of the success, and usually with coaches, if you have a coaching tree, that means you've been successful, and I think that tells you the story. And had to be unique because the funny thing about it is Renee's never actually faced a former player before, so that was a first. And I would imagine it was, and I would imagine I feel like, and knowing all the parties there, it had to be a little mixed emotions there. I know they hugged afterwards, and everything was good. There was no, so it's surreal because you have to beat them. You have to win. I mean, Jeff Conrad is the other assistant at UNF. He was a volunteer coach at UCF in 2015. So there's names there, and that's a compliment to Renee. And they're good people, and it's a credit to her and the success she's had at UCF. And but I know it had to be very mixed emotions because you're facing people you care about. It was surreal. It was for me. Just being there, and I'm just a broadcaster. It was very surreal, just to see Shelby do her thing, and it was weird. I mean, it was funny. I talked to her before the game, and it was real because I joked I had to go to the visiting dugout. I'm like, I'm not used to being on the visiting side. Yeah, I had no idea how to get there. They don't go there often, so. Right. But no, it was cool. It was fun. It was a unique night, and as you mentioned, you think about it, the four eras in UCF softball history, you go back to 2002, 2005 at the beginning when you were there as a student broadcaster. That was kind of the Stephanie Best era with Janae Shinhoster and Lindsay Enders. Then you move over to Conference USA, and that was the Allison Kime era of 2006 to 2008, leading them to the CUSA Championship in 2008 after Stephanie led them into 2005 ASUN Championship. Natalie Land, 2009 to 2012, two-time NCAA tournament appearance as an at-large in 2010 and 2012. And then you kind of had the Shelby / Mackenzie Audis / Kaylee Novak kind of / that golden era from 2013 on to the 2016 where the Knights won their 2 regular season championships in the American, a conference tournament championship at home in 2015, a top 16 ranking in the country, 50 wins in 2015. Nobody will ever forget that. And Shelby was a big part of that, as was Kaylee Novak, as you mentioned, and Mackenzie Audis and a million other players. But, surreal, man. Just surreal. It's just it was pretty cool.
So let's talk about this season in general, at least right now. Yeah. I think this is UCF right now 17-15 with a gazillion freshmen as their pitching staff. Cameron Toney was out there, pitched, I thought, pretty well. And Aaliyah White had to come in relief of her, but the Knights get a clutch hit from Cassidy Brewer to get the win 2-1. Now, UCF dropped 2 out of 3 to Houston at home to start the conference season. You get the win back midweek against North Florida. Now you go on the road. And the Knights have, I'm looking at the schedule right now, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Their next 7 games on the road. 3 at East Carolina, 1 at Florida Atlantic, 3 at Memphis before they finally come home for USF, a nationally televised game against USF on Thursday, April the 13th. This is following, 19 games in a row at home. So got to be road warriors now. This is going to be a very tough stretch for this team right now. What is the situation here? What are the possibilities for UCF in these next 7 games?
It's interesting. They had a lengthy road trip at the beginning of the year where they went to California and they went to Tuscaloosa and they went to Fort Myers, and they actually played very well. They went, I want to say they went 5-3 in that trip. And I wonder, this is such a young team, and it's not an excuse, it's a fact. It's such a young team. That's why I kind of chuckle, because I honestly, with young people, Jeff, and you know this, it's going to be up and down. You know, it's up and down. Some days going to be good, some not so good. It's just part of the growing pains process. And I know
highs are really high, the lows are really low. And,
you just have to kind of go game by game. I know it's cliche, but it is. You just got to let these girls kind of grow in their own maturation and their own tempo, if you will. And so that's why, I'm not dodging the question, but I'm just being honest. It's hard because you don't, from a game to game, I don't, this is not a team like, the last couple of years, it was easy to project, hey, they'll win this series and they'll sweep this team and they'll do. You can't do that with a young team because you just don't know what to expect on a daily basis. You can't. I mean, you mentioned the Houston series. The Knights could have easily swept that series with a couple plays here and there. Mm-hmm. But some youth kind of got in the way. But that's life, and that's softball, and that's the sports, and that's, especially when you have 3 freshman pitchers on your roster. I mean, they're going to have to grow at their own pace. And, I thought that was encouraging what you saw from Cameron Toney and Aaliyah White against a very good hitting UNF team to hold them to 1 run. And you hope they build on that for ECU. That'll be not an easy series going on the road, but there are some that I do wonder this out loud. And I'll be curious to see how they handle the road because I thought they played pretty well on the road earlier this year. Sometimes maybe with a young team, they might be better off playing on the road. Less distractions.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about your family coming in and getting tickets and pass lists, and you don't have to worry about friends, coming to the games and all that. Maybe sometimes you're on the road, you're just there with your teammates.
All those other distractions are a little bit more profound when you're when you're a younger player. You kind of. It's almost like you like playing at home a little bit too much because you're worried about your friends coming over, all that kind of stuff. Right. Yeah, I can see that.
That's what I'm wondering. We'll see. I mean, time will tell. That's the only thing I can think of because, like I said, they played very well when they went up to California. And they played well in Alabama. And they played well in Fort Myers. So not that they didn't play well at home, but it was certainly up and down. But so you're not in your comfort. You have to be more focused, more locked in. I'll be curious to see how they come. I don't know. I rather just focus on East Carolina for now and see what happens. I don't, FAU is very good in Boca. That will not be easy. And Memphis is a scrappy team. I think they're a sleeper team in the league that I don't think people are talking about. So, it's just it's youth, man, and this. I mean, being a parent, your son, right? I mean, there's days where he behaves perfectly and he's great and all that, and then there's days where you're like scratching yourself like, oh my goodness, this kid never going to figure it out, right? What is he doing? What's he thinking? Well, he's a kid. He doesn't know any better. He doesn't know what he's doing. So sometimes with these girls, again, they're freshmen and sophomore. They just got to grow into it, and it'll come. It might come this weekend. It might come next weekend. Everybody's different. Some it clicks earlier than others, but you can't force it. You can't overreact to it. And I think that's my message. Don't overreact to specific results. It's not the end of the world if they lose a game a certain way or if they win a game a certain way. It's such a marathon. You just kind of let the maturation play out. And I think we'll see how they handle the road against ECU. The one thing I like is that's where the conference tournament will take place in May. So the fact that they'll get to play 3 games in there will help them in May for the conference tournament. So
I'm excited to see when they get back. They'll have that home game on ESPNU against USF. I think.
Are you working that game? Are you working that game?
Give me a second. I'll double check. But I'm hoping that I am. But Thursday night, right? I mean, that's a pretty big spot. By the way, it's going to be student night. So yes, I am working that game. I am working that game on April the 13th. And actually, I'm working the Thursday and the Friday. So
I don't think I'm working the third. Again, the game is nationally televised on ESPNU, so they're going to have my booth.
yeah, you're not going to be there. Well, you'll be there.
I'll be there. So I might be like bothering you like every other inning. Like, hey, what is going on? What do you think? No, okay. I don't know what to do. I normally when I go to home games, I'm usually broadcasting. So it'll be one of those weird. I did this last year. It happened last year when UCF was at home against Tulsa, and the game was on the American Digital Network, and it was Bernie Gunther and Allison Kime, and they told me, "Okay, you got the day off," and I'm like, "So what do I do?"
Yeah. You wonder what do you do? Just sit there and watch? What I mean, I feel uncomfortable when I just sit there in the stands. It's like why am I not doing anything? I hate this.
Yes. No, you just absolutely described how I felt. I was very uncomfortable. I didn't, because, as media, you don't cheer. You don't cheer. It's just your mindset. You can't.
Right.
So it's not like I can just flip a switch all of a sudden and say, yeah, it's not. So, yeah, I mean, I sat with some family and friends and what, but I was nervous. I just had to move around. I couldn't. I just was very uncomfortable. It's a big series, obviously, but that'll be my.
I end up wanting to eat something, and I just end up stuffing my face full of hot dogs. And I mean,
I don't know if I'm going to do that either. I don't see myself doing that, but maybe drinks. Maybe I'll get some soda or something. I don't know. A lot of it.
Soda, right? But by the way, real quick, I wanted to bring this up because when you look at the standings right now, Tulsa, by the way, off to a pretty good start. They're 23-10, 3-0 in the league. Beat USF all 3. UCF obviously 1-2, Houston 2-1, Memphis at 2-1. As well, they beat East Carolina 2 out of 3. UConn still has yet to play a conference game just yet. So, anything on the American standings that catches your eye?
Tulsa's very good.
Yeah,
in my opinion, they're the team to beat. They have experienced hitters, and they have an experienced pitcher in Watson, who's been around the block. She has improved immensely. I think right now she's the best pitcher in the league. And you look at Tulsa, they're playing very well. Coach Barfield's very well coached. And again, they have a combination of experienced hitters from that conference tournament championship team. They have enough hitters coming back, and they have experienced pitching coming back. That's the thing. UCF doesn't have a lot of experience, especially pitching, returning. USF does not have experienced pitching that much returning or offensively. They got their issues there from that standpoint. It's a young league, and Tulsa, I think, has the most experience, and I think they have the advantage. And Tulsa already took care of USF, sweeping them in Tampa. They host Houston. They host UCF. So I think Tulsa is the team to beat. After that, I think it's wide open. I mean, I think Houston's a very improved ball club under Coach Besley in her first year, and I think Houston's certainly I was very impressed with them. I think it's wide open after that. But right now, I think Tulsa is definitely the team to beat, because they have a mixture of enough experience offensively and pitching that I think will put them over. It will keep them over the top there in the conference.
All right, well, that'll be key to watch, especially with these next 2 road series coming up. Let's switch over to baseball real quick. And UCF had a midweek game. Well, first of all, dropped 2 out of 3 against Dartmouth this past weekend, but did finish up the weekend with a 15-0 win. Beat Jacksonville on Tuesday, 10-1. And by the way, for the latest on UCF baseball news, make sure you check with blackandgoldbanneret.com because Brian Murphy has been churning out some good baseball stuff of late following this team. The Knights right now 26th in the country in terms of their ranking. I'll have to get the source of the ranking, but there's 1,800 polls in college baseball. But beat Jacksonville 10-1. The key here for UCF baseball is, like I said, they're 20-6. Great start, and now we're starting conference play on Friday with a 3-game set against Houston. So here we go. This is the meat of the season now for UCF baseball. We're going to start to separate the men from the boys, and looking at the baseball standings in the American. You start out with Houston. That's going to be a pretty tough matchup to start out. Houston at 19-5 overall. They've won 11 games in a row. USF right now, and by the way, no one has started conference play just yet. But USF right now is the best record overall in the American. They're 23-3. Although I think USF's schedule has been quite soft, and they've only played Florida State once. They did beat them, to their credit, but a lot of home games. In fact, looking at what I'm seeing, they haven't even left the state of Florida yet in their schedule. They haven't played Florida at all. Everybody else they played at Tampa. So I think that's a soft 23-3 that they're. Houston's at 19-5. UCF is at 20-6. So you're going by win percentage. UCF is third. Then you have East Carolina, Memphis, UConn, Cincinnati, Tulane. This is going to be key for UCF. You're starting off with a really tough opponent in Houston. You're coming off a bit of a slide against actually a pretty good Dartmouth team. Usually, traditionally, a very good team out of the Ivy League. At least you have Houston at home, and you get Stetson. Then you go to USF April 7th, 8th, and 9th. So for Greg Lovelady's team, this is going to be this is where you really start to find things out, right? I mean, I'm actually looking at this perspective. I think that there's a possibility that maybe I'm nervous that they're going to come back to earth. I'm optimistic that they won't, but I think that this is. To me, this is almost like starting the whole season. Really is starting the whole season all over again. The way this is working, don't you?
Yeah, I this is where we find out. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, the schedule is what it is. We're going to find out answers. Houston's a good team. We're going to find out answers finally. What's the team? Is they're good or they're not? What we don't. We're going to find out some answers finally. I think, I've kind of taken the wait and see approach. And certainly they're improved in some areas, but there's some questions in other areas. So we finally get some answers in conference, and this league very well, having covered the conference tournament last year. It's a deep league. I think USF, I know you're questioning their schedule, but they're healthier this year. They got some young, talented players under Coach Kingston there. I think they are improved. I think Houston's the best team in the league, possibly, at least on paper. And it's a good league, and we'll see how good they have improved from last year. And I think Coach Lovely has mentioned it a couple times. Hey, we've been exposed in certain situations. So I'm just looking forward to seeing getting some answers. And that's usually what conference is. When you get into conference play will always expose your weaknesses and also will show your strengths. And I think that's what we'll learn.
The thing that I'm looking at as we head to the conference schedule is really where we are. All right. So team batting, we're fourth in the conference, rating 295 as a team. Team pitching, we're third. Team ERA of 2.31. That's pretty good. Fielding, we could be better, third from the bottom. But in terms of, your qualified hitters, we don't have too many guys up toward the top. Luke Hamlin, by the way, is actually hitting pretty well, though. He's up at 361. Rylan Thomas at 360. And Matthew Mike at 345. Those guys are the ones who are going to be, certainly leading the way in terms of the bats. I'm curious to see how they're going to continue. But when we look at our, in terms of the pitching, I think that everything's been spread out so nicely that I like to think that Coach Lovelady's strategy has been actually working to this point, where you're going to have some fresher arms heading into the conference season. That's going to be. I think the real key is, are you able to keep those arms relatively fresh? We know how he's not afraid to use the bullpen. In this last game against Jacksonville is no exception. He kept the starter in there, Chris Williams, for 5 innings. He gave up scattered 5 hits, gave up 1 run, and pulled him 60 pitches. Thaddeus Ward came in there, threw 41 pitches in an inning and a third. Gave up 2 hits, struck out a couple. Then it was Jason Barr and Bryce Tucker. And I was talking with our good friend Dean Smith in the softball press box today. We're talking a little bit of baseball, and we kind of came to the agreement that Jason Barr and Bryce Tucker right now, the way we're looking at them is they're kind of like Mariano Rivera and John Wetland with the 96 Yankees. I mean, when they come in, it's good night Irene, because they can shorten the game up by 3 innings if you use them right. And I think that's going to be the key for UCF. Will they be able to shorten the games with the bullpen and keep those guys fresh and keep the starters fresh as they head toward the postseason?
We're going to find out. Like I said, conference will expose the truths and the myths and what's right. That's the thing. I just want to see what they do in conference before I even, make any evaluations. Let's just see what happens.
We're going to get that. We're going to find out pretty quick with UCF baseball schedule this month, with Houston coming up to start out the conference season. All right, we got a little bit of outside of the big sports news here. Men's golf. How about Manuel Elvira? Finished as the runner-up at the FAU Sloman Autism Invitational. Led the Knights to a team championship. All 4 rounds even or better, and that earned him American Athletic Conference Player of the Week. So congrats to Manuel. This tournament was at the PGA National on the Squire course. This is a tough course that they were playing, and he wins the American Athletic Conference Golfer of the Week. Before we get to track and field, I did have some news that I did want to pass along. So Todd Dagenais just got word that he got a 4-year contract extension. So he's going to stay at UCF for at least the next 4 years. And he and I were trading some messages on Twitter. Todd is, and I owe him a correction, because I had initially thought that he was already the longest tenured UCF volleyball coach in terms of most seasons coached at UCF. This coming year, 2017, he will have that record all by himself, because Meg Collado coached at UCF for 9 years. Todd's coached at UCF for 9 years. Next year will be year number 10. So he will be UCF's longest tenured coach by year as on opening day of 2017. Interestingly enough, he's within 25 wins of becoming UCF's all-time winningest volleyball coach. He's right on the heels of both Laura Smith and Lucy McDaniel, and that's all time, man. They name stuff after you when you start doing that. 23 wins behind Laura Smith. So Todd right now at 165. This is according to my unofficial count. Laura Smith has 188, and I think Todd is actually third. Lucy McDaniel's just behind Laura Smith for number 1 all time at UCF. Winningest coaches in UCF volleyball history. So Knights have a good season this year. Todd could very well end up the winningest coach in UCF volleyball history by the end of this year. So obviously I'm partial, because I've known Todd since he got here, and how much of a volleyball fan I am. I know how good of a coach he is, and I really do hope he gets that. I have no reason to suspect that he won't eventually get that, if not this year, certainly next year. Or not this coming year, certainly the year after that, I should say. But that's going to be fun to sort of keep an eye on that. And the job that he has done with that program is nothing short of outstanding. So congrats to Todd on the contract extension. Certainly well-deserved. Track and field. They will be heading up to Gainesville for the Pepsi Florida Relays this weekend, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, March 30th through April the 1st. That's a big Southern meet that they're going to be going for. So keep an eye for some good news on that. Women's tennis right now updated. They're 12-6. They're coming off a win over Milwaukee. That was back on March 21st. We talked about that last week, but they got a Saturday match down in Miami against Florida International. Florida International is pretty good. That's on April the 1st. That's on this coming Saturday. And then they have one more home match April 16th. That's against USF. And then it's time for the American Championships starting Wednesday, April 19th at the USTA National Campus down at Lake Nona. Men's tennis right now 11-5, but they got another top 30 win at Florida State in Tallahassee. Beat the Seminoles 4-1. They got a match, of course, against USF coming up on Saturday, April the 1st. Then they're at East Tennessee State and at UNC Wilmington before the American Men's Championships at Lake Nona on April the 20th. But how about that? Another top 30 win for UCF tennis over Florida State, Eric Lopez.
Yeah, Mr. Roddick's doing his thing, man. That's what he does.
UCF's climbing the rankings, man. Number 47 right now, all of a sudden. And we're seeing the seeds get planted now, aren't we? Third UCF opponent in the top 30 that the Knights have beaten this season.
It's a good resume builder.
Yeah, and I'll take that. And the other thing too, Danny Kersnerman won the American Athletic Conference Player of the Week award. He was in the number 2 position, 1-0 in his singles, 1-0 in doubles, defeating number 125 ranked player Guy Iradukunda of Florida State, and that won him the actual or helped contribute to UCF's win. And by the way, listen to this, Eric. He is 15-1 in singles this year, and 7-2 in doubles. So he's paired with Corey Lovett in the doubles, and Danny's been excellent this year for UCF. He's really been a revelation. So that's fun to see. So that's our update on tennis. So right now, here we are. We're heading headlong towards baseball and softball now that basketball's a wrap. But we got a lot of stuff coming up. It's going to be a pretty busy time of year, Eric. What are you working on the rest of this week?
I'm just locked in on Tuck and O'Neill, producing Tuck and O'Neill as I do weekdays on 1080. So it'll be a little bit following softball from afar. So that'll be what I'll be doing, and then going from there. So it should be fun. That'll be nice for a weird weekend where I don't actually have to go to do a broadcast.
Yeah, we've got. Let's see, we've got. It's kind of all of a sudden it's this dead weekend, at least for me. I mean, there's no softball. I'm not going to be doing PA obviously until the USF tournament comes up, or until the USF series. Of course, we're going to be watching baseball coming up, and one last note. This kind of quietly happened with all the hoopla surrounding basketball. Spring football is underway at UCF all of a sudden. And Knights had their first practice. Practices are closed, right?
Yep.
Yeah, you can't get in. We have no idea what in the hell is happening at UCF football other than practice is underway. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I got news to break it to people. Even if it was open, you're really not going to learn much.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. But everyone always speculates, what's the quarterback situation? What's the depth chart look like? And I agree with you. I'm like, I really just don't care. It's spring football, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
Although we're going to have, what is it, Lauren Elena's going to be performing at the
sure
UCF Festival spring game scheduled for April 22nd. Yeah, sure. That's
enjoy.
That's fine. That works. Nice little day out.
I will be out of town, so I will not be.
Oh, you're out of town? Where are you going to be?
I will be broadcasting USF Memphis for the American Digital Network that Saturday. That Saturday of the spring game. So I will miss another. I will miss another spring game. So I'll have to depend on you for that one.
Eric, the spring game will miss you.
Okay, I don't think so, but I think it's fair to say.
And then let's see what else we have. One last note. I wanted to get this in because, it's funny that I mentioned this because, no, I wouldn't say funny, but I wanted to mention this because to me, Becky Kramer, the head rowing coach. Would you believe that I on one weekend I actually ran into her at a park. I was taking my son out, and I ran into her at a park, and we caught up a little bit on UCF rowing. They have the Sunshine State Invitational in Sarasota. UCF rowing does March 31st and April 1st. So that should be so keep an eye out on that. UCF, by the way, has as their next home meet over at the Intercollegiate Rowing Center will be April 29th against Miami at 9 a.m. That's a Saturday, and that's the one right before they start the American Championship. So good luck to Becky Kramer and UCF Rowing as well for their upcoming meet at Sarasota. And that's before they have a couple serious road trips. They're going out to Sacramento, California for a couple days. You're going up to Clemson. Clemson's pretty good. So I wanted to make sure that we mentioned Becky and her staff out there who work hard out and what a really beautiful facility out there, and they don't get enough pub, and considering the job that Becky has done at UCF, we should it's something that we should be paying attention to as fans, because there's a lot of people who are involved in UCF rowing. It's a huge sport in terms of numbers. And a lot of non-scholarship athletes who work very hard at their craft, and they deserve that. So as we wrap up here, Eric Lopez, what are you looking forward to the most?
Baseball conference opener against Houston. Finding some answers there, seeing how softball handles the road environment. I mean, that's really going to be the storylines.
Those are going to be the two big storylines. I'm hoping that we'll have Brian Murphy on next week at the very soonest. And then we'll also, and we'll see, as the spring sort of progresses, we'll have some guests to sort of debrief from basketball. We'll talk a little football here and there with the spring game and whatnot. I place about as much focus on the spring game as I do on National Signing Day, which is to say not a whole heck of a lot, but it's something that we should be interested in. And then we're heading towards the summertime. We'll see how that goes from there. So. All right, Eric Lopez, thanks for joining me, man.
All right, Jeffrey, take it easy.
All right, and thank you for joining us here on the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. Remember, you can follow us at blackandgoldbanneret.com, subscribe to us via email, and also look up Black and Gold Banneret on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at UCF_Banneret. Also follow me at Jeff_Sharon and Eric Lopez at
Eric Lopez Elo.
And don't forget, you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. Don't forget to leave us a review there. Also, SoundCloud, Google Play, and tune in as well. For Eric Lopez, I'm Jeff Sharon. Thanks for listening. This has been the Black and Gold Banneret Podcast. We'll catch you next week.
Today's episode is brought to you by Cars.com. With over 2 million vehicles and 50,000 more added every day, Cars.com will match you with the perfect car for you, your budget, your life, your style. And if you're ready to say goodbye to your current car, Cars.com will get you an instant offer to cash it in. Just start by entering your license plate and get matched with a local dealer who will write you the check. So whether you're looking to buy or sell, just go to Cars.com. It's magical.